I'm Olivia. I'm the development executive here at Locksmith Animation.
I'm Chloe. I'm a development coordinator at Locksmith Animation in the UK office.
Today is a special day. New friends coming up my way.
Development kind of covers everything from the original inception of the idea all the way through to it hopefully getting greenlit by a buyer and being able to go into production. So what we do as a development department is we do the searching for the idea, and that can be looking at books that we might want to adapt. It can be taking pitches from talent or script submissions, reaching out to talent to see if they have any ideas with people that we want to work with. And then once we've got an idea that we want to run with, we probably have to do an option for it, which is where you basically buy the right to adapt it into a film for a certain period of time. And then we as a team will come together and we start developing it into what we think that could be as a film. So usually we have a lot of story sessions trying to kind of flesh out what it should be. We'll attach like a writer and a director if there isn't one already, part of the package. And we start building out a pitch that we hope will be really compelling to a buyer to make them want to invest money in us producing the film for them, basically. So we might also hire artists to start doing some initial character design and concept work, and all of that goes into this big pitch package that we present to our buyer and sort of hope that we'll get funding to make the film. And sometimes that funding can come in stages. So what we call amber light funding is where sometimes a buyer will give you a bit of money to develop the project a little bit further. So that might be taking it to script stage or getting some more solid character designs made, or just pushing it further along, and we might hire producers and production managers to start getting involved. That's where dev starts to fade out. And then hopefully you reach a stage where your buyer is happy to greenlight the project and it can go into production, and that's where we unfortunately say goodbye to it, which can feel really strange.
It varies from project to project. Each project often requires something different, doesn't it? It's sort of, some things require a lot more fleshing out story-wise. For example, if it's an original idea and it's just a concept that we like, obviously we have to build a story and a character, loads of things there. Mm-hmm. Whereas with IP, for example, if you have a book that you like that we're going to make, then you have a set of characters and a story, and it's just about how we're going to make that transfer to screen. So that's a very different beast, really. So it can take between a year and 2 years, hopefully. Some things take longer, some things take longer.
We try to go as fast as we can.
Yes,
but inevitably there are hurdles, and it depends on timing with buyers as well, what they're looking for at the right moment, when is the right time to pitch something. There's basically a balance of we want to have enough on our slate that we have enough material to be consistently submitting to buyers, lots of different avenues for things that could get made, hopefully, fingers crossed. But we also don't want to spread ourselves so thin that we can't give each project the attention that it needs to become more fleshed out and to become the best possible version of that film that it can be.
Today is a special day.
So I've been at Locksmith for about 4 years now. I've just had my 4th anniversary, which is very lovely. I started here as a development assistant, and I came out of TV production originally. That's what I'd been working in for a long time, and actually what I'd wanted to do since I was quite young. I always wanted to work in comedy with sitcoms and things like that, especially on the British side of things, because that's what I really love. So I worked in production on a few different shows with BBC and Channel 4, various other companies. I realised that I did, as much as I love production, I learned a lot about how TV works and everything. I've worked in that for about 7-8 years. I studied English and philosophy at university. It had a lot of transferable skills which were really useful, and I've since realised that English is a lot of storytelling, and philosophy is a lot about thinking and analysing and evaluating things, which is exactly what I do in development.
I've been at Locksmith for just over a year, I think now. Originally I studied English with creative writing at uni. I did a lot of different jobs as a runner, mostly on factual stuff. It was a lot of documentaries and sports and fact-end shows like Britain's Got Talent I did. And it was a good whirlwind way to learn about live action production. But really I always wanted to be on the scripted side of things. I just couldn't really figure out how to do that. But eventually I met someone who worked in development and explained what that was. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. That sounds great. After meeting that person, they let me do some coverage for their drama company, which is basically where companies outsource material that they need to be read by someone and analysed as to whether it could be good for adaptation. And while I was juggling that, a role came up for me as a production assistant on an animated series, and that was the first time I'd worked in animation. Kind of that production animation experience combined with the reading experience I had is what I think made me someone that Netflix looked at when they were recruiting for a creative assistant role. Interestingly, I sort of came across Locksmith from the other side of the coin first, because when I was at Netflix, the executive that I was working for was the overseeing executive on That Christmas. Our role is kind of split into a few different categories. One of them is looking after the projects that we have on our development slate right now. So for me as a dev coordinator, that's a lot of support kind of across everything that we're doing to try and get that project ready to pitch. And so I'm usually assisting the director and the writer with gathering materials and references. Sometimes we're helping them build their pitch deck out or rewrite parts of the treatment that we might be working on. If we have story sessions, I'm usually arranging the logistics for those and being in the room to take notes and things like that. Distribute those afterwards so that everybody can get working. And yeah, just a lot of general support on the projects. And then another category is that we're always looking for new ideas and new projects as well. So that's something that's kind of split across the whole team. So where we get books submitted or scripts submitted, or we're just generally researching and looking for stuff.
A lot of my job comes from building those relationships with agents and things like that, getting them to suggest talent or meeting up with a lot of their talent, and I do take the lead on a lot of like media rights things, so in terms of making relationships with publishers and literary agents, things like that, so they send over books that are going to be published in the next year or two, and so that we can sort of try and get ahead and see if anything that's coming out might be suitable for us. There's definitely a lot of reading in my job. I'm often asked to give notes back on scripts that we have through, or treatments, things that our projects are bringing up, and how we might be able to improve it, or sometimes if I'm kept on a project I might be overseeing a lot of it, but if I'm sort of not part so much of the everyday of a project, then I might come in as fresh eyes and do notes on that. And then sometimes you're really in the weeds in the story room, kind of working out what's happening. You have to really understand the story, but you also have to really understand what the marketplace is. You have to understand what we're selling, how it's which I know sounds a bit derivative, but it's sort of, you are selling sort of a product at the end of the day, so you have to kind of keep an eye out for how you can kind of build a package together, what makes something appealing to a buyer, what makes something appealing to the audience.
The marketing of a film is more interesting than it seems at first, particularly in animation, because our films take so long to make. You are really trying to anticipate how something's going to be received in maybe 5 years' time, which can be quite difficult, so we're really trying to watch trends almost more in advance than you would in other genres. And particularly with all audience films, which is what we hope our films will be, like you're looking at how it's going to appeal to this demographic, that demographic, is there something for everyone in it? Which is quite a unique challenge that you might not get elsewhere.
I think it's about your passion and what you're really interested in, and making sure that you absorb a lot of content that's out there. You have to read a lot, you have to watch a lot, you have to know what's going on in the industry, you have to, go and learn about story. Definitely, there's lots of amazing books out there that can teach you about basics of storytelling and structure and things like that, and that's always going to be really helpful. You can go to your McKees, or John York Into the Woods is very good. There's lots of things out there. So definitely just absorb as much as you can, find out what you really like, and find out what companies are making those kind of shows. That's always a good idea, keeping on top of everything. It is hard to get into development because it's really competitive, so the jobs don't come up that often, so really keep an eye on things. Entry level wise, I think development assistant is the first role, but do script reading for companies if you can, and don't be afraid to take on other roles that help you get into the company or help you learn what to do in the industry, you know.
If there are shows or films that you love, see if you can find those scripts online and read them and see how they actually work as a written document.
That's a really good bit of advice.
Right.
Yeah, there's loads of screenplays online anywhere, like you can just Google it and you can download it as a PDF.
Yeah,
that's a really good bit
that's
of
so
advice.
helpful for just learning the nuts and bolts of how scripts actually work. Reaching out to companies where you really like the stuff that they've made is a great shout, and being able to say to them why you're passionate about what they do will usually help, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if they don't have a job for you right now, someone might be willing to sit down with you and talk a little bit about what they do and how it works, and that can be a great way to get your foot in the door. Spending your time wisely in other positions can actually be really useful. A lot of people, for example, come to dev from working in agencies because they've been an agent's assistant and they've worked with lots of writers, so they have a great connection to talent, which is incredibly useful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know a few agents and assistants that have moved over into development.
Yeah. Or I know a lot of people that started as PAs or runners or front of house staff, and then that's how they got to know the development department. They made themselves known and made their enthusiasm clear. So, and all of those things give you greater context about how films are made, which is useful to know in development. So
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely helps to be able to have some other knowledge. But I think both of us, having worked in production on other things, has helped us just understand exactly what the process is, but also it just gives you context for what you're setting up the production to be and what that crew's going to go through and things like that. You know, I think that's a huge part of it. And it's also, I think it's good life experience anyway to just kind of to build up and get to know other people in the industry and kind of go through things just as a learning phase. Take any constructive criticism on board and see how you can kind of work with things and work out exactly why you love a certain film or book or TV show. Work out why you love it or why you don't love it. You know, that's always really useful as well. Watching films that you don't think quite work and working out why they don't quite work.
Yeah,
that's really useful.
And it's an equally important part of development to know why you might pass on something.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking it on. So you need to be able to articulate that to the team just as much.
Get your text and I'm on my way. After school, go